Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio, the show about ways to stay competitive in a changing market, break through business plateaus, and respond to the changing expectations of today's customers. Your host, Jess Dewell, is a rapid growth entrepreneur, consultant, and business advocate with a 20-year track record of business excellence. She candidly discusses how to achieve your growth strategy and realize your company's unfulfilled potential. Now, here's Jess.
You are in the right place for conversations about current needs that we as business leaders face regarding technology, customer expectations, and quickly changing markets. This program is about what it means to reach our short-term goals and increase our confidence in our long-term positioning. This is program 238, Understand Your Culture. Now, culture and business growth are directly intertwined. We tend to let one be that, I know left and right brain don't matter anymore because we have new research, but more left-brained on one side, business growth, more right-brained on the other side about culture and people. And so we've got the logical and the feely. Well, both of those things matter and in fact influence each other when it comes to growth. And that's what we're going to talk about today, and the importance of integrating our culture and passing it along as quickly as possible and really making a place that can foster and grow and change and adapt as we must. With us today is Barbara Jaynes. She is the founder of Positively Funded. She is a business development She leads a business development firm focused on making nonprofits thrive. Barbara came into the nonprofit sector after having spent over 15 years in large-scale commercial real estate development projects. Russell Dennis is also with us today. He is a possibility engineer, and he focuses on nonprofit difference makers. He provides easy-to-access and easy-to-understand tools that can be implemented to get results. These tools move your organization the direction that you want it to go. Thanks for both of you for being here today. I'm excited about our conversation. And
Good to be back. It's been a while. It's good to be back on the Voice of Bold Business Radio.
Oh yeah. And you know, I know you both work in the nonprofit sector, and I know you both have not nonprofit experience. And so for our listeners who are more business, every once in a while, when I bring people that specialize in nonprofit, you get an eyebrow raise, right? And I will tell you, I think in some ways, the business tools that we use for business and a for-profit enterprise are utilized more than we realize. And in this particular case, we were talking to, I was mentioning earlier the logical and the less logical way and the elements that come into business. And nonprofits tend to naturally have strengths in that non-logical area, which is why for the two of you being here in the space that you're in, experience in both realms makes a big difference, because this is the stuff that we grapple with because there is no beginning, middle, and end sometimes. There just is, right? You stepped on that journey and more power to us, we hope. So let's jump into it with our question. All right, Barbara, I'm going to ask you, how do you help new employees understand the culture of your organization or an organization that you're consulting with?
Hello, Jess. Thanks for having me here today. I'm so excited to be with you and Russ. For me, helping with onboard new employees is something that I do often with nonprofit development with their corporate champion partners. So I give a lot of great suggestions and how to emotionally engage and attach and how important that is. And I want to start with some business things and then lead into some nonprofit and emotional engagement things. There's an amazing book, The Power of Moments. And in The Power of Moments, the book talks about how John Deere in Japan versus John Deere in America, the factories. And in Japan, when a new employee starts, they open up their computer and there's a video from the CEO welcoming them their first day. And how that little video made such a huge difference in turnover. So I say, start with the welcome video. Hey, we're happy you're here. We're glad you're part of our community. And then send them the events calendar. What is going on in your culture? What are you doing? Are you having a kickball tournament? Is this department having a challenge with another department? Do you have some nonprofit activities that you're doing? Put that on your calendar and send them the cafeteria menu. Invite them in, make them feel welcome. Hey, we're here, we've got a lot of stuff. Also, you want to send out benefits reminders. Did you know, and did you know reminders? Did you know that in 30 days, you're eligible to join our 401k, and then talk about your 401k stats and the money. I also want to do an emotional component. So you want to have a video there from your charities saying, we're so glad that you've joined Cosmic Trucking, because Cosmic Trucking has made such a difference in our community, and we need your help, and here are the things they've done. And you do a video, a very informal video, nothing fancy, just informal, and this is who we are, and it's real and authentic, and it engages you. Also, in the new hire packet, make sure that you have letters from the charities that you work with, thanking that company and showing everything that that company does, and all the opportunities your employees have besides a paycheck, because they need so much more and they want so much more. So make sure that you have that. And also, be sure to do a check-in. At the end of the first week, do a check-in. Hey, how are you? How'd it go? What'd you think? I really want your honest feedback. Do another check-in at 30 days and one at 90 days, and just see how that person is, because it's so much more expensive to have to keep rehiring and retraining, and you want them to stay. You hired them for a reason, so help them to stay.
Thank you, Barbara. And Russ, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Russ, how do you help a new employee understand the culture of your organization or an organization that you consult with?
Well, you know, it all begins with leadership, and you have to lead with influence. And so for a culture, it's really, what are the norms in that organization? What are the behaviors and attitudes that are characteristic? And you really want to start up front by making sure that the people you hire have some synergy with what you're doing. You want to make sure that they are comfortable, that they are a fit for the culture that you have. And the best organizations have cultures that learn and adapt. They're collaborative, they're inclusive, they're innovative, and there's a sense of accountability. And the best situation is to have organization, to have people in the organization who have goals, values, visions, and a life mission that really mirrors and matches with what the organization has, so that everything is done synergistically and in alignment, and you understand what it is that people want out of that experience. So if you can do that and have those conversations up front, you're bringing the right people on board. And then it's always working with one another to grow. So you develop your people, you develop your volunteers, your staff, your board, everybody grows at the same time, and you have collaborative decision-making in place to the extent that you have. Now, the leader is responsible for setting the parameters of success and the big overarching goals. But to the extent that you can bring people in, get that buy-in, you can create accountability systems. And then you set the standard and you let people go and work to their strengths and create those things that are going to bring you that success. So it's all about collaboration. It's all about alignment. So it's critical to bring the right people in initially.
All I want to do is sell my widgets and make a profit. I was listening to both of you, and the three of us would make an awesome choir. That's what I got. So I brought in a little bit of something else for our conversation. And now here's what I think is fascinating. I think it's fascinating that something that you said, Russ, and Barbara, you were giving tangible tips to actually get this done, which is you've got to know your culture. Well, we know we have a culture whether we like it or not.
It may not be the culture that you want.
Right. Yeah. So if we're fuming at the end of every day, if we're heavy, if we're wondering what's going to happen next, how are we going to do these things? Well, I would say you can totally go back to logic and you can power your way through. I would also say that's the harder path in one sense, because it's going to take a lot more effort and energy, and there's going to be a higher, I'm going to say sacrifice. There's going to, the risk is higher, whereas it's a different kind of risk, and it will take a little bit longer to go down this journey in this, I'm going to call it the gray area, this gray area where we're not quite sure what's going on, but if we can look and see. So I know something that I say on a fairly regular basis is our actions reflect our priorities. And so what would your suggestions be, and what have you seen work when people don't like the culture they're in, and maybe we didn't like the culture we were in? And so this could be a very personal experience for you as well, of, okay, I don't like what I'm feeling. I don't like the way things are going. What can I actually do about it? How do I define my culture?
I have a great example. When I was doing urban development, I had a boss that he was a great guy, but he didn't celebrate our victories, and no one ever felt like they had a win. So one time we landed this huge deal in one of our sites, and I just brought in cake and champagne and just said, everybody in the conference room, including him, he didn't know, and horns and hats, and said, we're celebrating because this is what we do. We worked really hard. We got it done. We crossed that finish line, and we get to take our victory lap, and this is it. So take the biggest piece of cake you want and have some champagne with it. And he was just floored. But he's like, you're right. This is it. This, celebrate.
You know, I spent quite a bit of time working for a tribal government, and Native American cultures are very different, and it's quite a learning curve. And when it comes to culture, there are a lot of dynamics that are taking place all at once. But the key is to get from behind the desk and talk to people. When you have a separation, and I've seen a few organizations where there's just this sort of perceived separation between the people in the nonprofit and the people they're serving. You got to get rid of that if it's there, because it limits your ability to earn the trust of the people that you're serving, which is going to have a negative impact on how you're able to serve them. So it's getting from behind the desk and really getting to the question about what's not being said. A lot of times people will come in and they'll start talking to me about a situation, and they were agitated. So what they were saying to me sometimes didn't seem to be as impactful as they were acting like it was. So I had to get to the question behind the question and find out, okay, what is it that you're really saying? A lot of times when people walk into a room, if they're agitated, they have an issue that they're not really speaking about. So you have to be sensitive to that. And creating a culture where people can say what they mean without being attacked or without feeling that they're being dismissed is really critical.
I'm trying to think. There are so many stories I have about this, and I'm going to go back to one of my early days. It's on my mind from a conversation that I was having with Phyllis Weiss. I was talking about my first foray into management, right? I was in the middle of college. I knew how to work really hard. I had burnt myself out putting myself through college, and was in the middle of running a business that was growing and growing and growing. And all of a sudden I had employees, and I didn't the managers that you have ever had on the jobs that you have are not necessarily the ones that are going to help you scale a company in gigantic leaps and bounds. And so I did a lot of management by self-help book. And because I knew what I didn't know, and I knew I wanted to learn, and I wanted to instill the learning or the love of learning in the people working with me. And that had really mixed results. I had people that were like, who are you? And you can't make me, because part of our staff meetings would be book reports. I mean, the equivalent of a book report, right? And but it was, the intention was there, and I was just going about it all wrong. And so time goes by, and they hated me for that. I really think, and I was frustrated, but I'm like, don't you see, I want to do a good job for you. And don't you see, we could be so much more. And I have no time to actually manage anything because we're all flying by the seat of our pants. So this is how we're going to try and hold on to our part of this magic carpet, if you will, right? And then as time went by, I realized that what I was prioritizing is something a little, Barbara, like what you were talking about. I was prioritizing getting stuff done to the detriment of the team. So what we were tracking and how fast we were doing things and the quantity with which we were doing things burnt the people around me out. And I had high turnover. I had high turnover because, like what Russell was saying, get out from behind the desk. Well, I was never at my desk to even get up and get around. I was always on the road somewhere else. And so the staff that I had right there, these 9 other people, were really suffering from the fact that that was my job and I wasn't there. And so I recognized too that, you know, as a CEO, as a COO, as a senior person or a middle manager, or especially if we're a traveling department. I mean, can you imagine leading a department in travel? I can, I was there. And being able to have skills that work with that are very different than skills behind the desk. And I unfortunately needed them all, and I didn't have any. So that was my learn the hard way of a lot of different things. But I recognized, I prioritized what could I report on, not how were we doing it. I was focused on here's what the numbers were, and I was not focused on how could we do it even better if I asked you, part of my team. And so that was the part that I was missing. And by the way, I use that story because it's still something I'm learning from, but I'm glad I can laugh about it. I can share it. I'm pretty sure I've never met anybody else who tried to do what I did, but I also recognize we all have crazy stories of that. And it comes down to, well, what was I prioritizing? And it was impacting my team in a negative way. And so, and it's funny that we're talking about integrating new employees, because I was like, hey, you're here? There's a desk, have fun, right? I mean, isn't that still today? That's how a lot of businesses work. There's this courtship period, if you will. There's this concept of here's what we've got. We wanted to attract you. We want to keep you here. We want you to be excited. And then the day comes and you're like, well, now what do I do? Right? The person on the other side, they've been loving on me. They've been showing me how important I am. They've been telling me I'm going to make a difference here, but nobody's told me how. I've been in those shoes too, right? Show up. What do you do? How do you do this? And so I'm curious, you know, the examples that you gave at the beginning, Barb, are incredibly awesome. And then I'm thinking about, you know, day in and day out, something that you said, Barb, was that do these check-ins and talk about that. My mind went immediately to reviews. And so I'm trying to turn this into twofold. I want to get to know you as a person, but I also need to know, for the sake of you and your role here and developing you and supporting you, and for the sake of the company, to make sure our organization, profit or nonprofit, is on the path it needs to be on. These check-ins are really important. So I'm curious from you, Barbara, what are your elements of an effective check-ins with people around us?
Jess, that is a great question. And I think that an effective check-in is, what have you prioritized since you've been here? What do you think is most important? And what have you found to be, you know, what has been your biggest success since you've been here, and how did you get there? And what do you want your next biggest success to be, and how can we support those goals? What is it that you need from us to do your very best and to be your best person here? And how can we support that? And I think that the check-ins aren't so much, oh, well, I saw that you did 80 calls last week, but only 60 calls this week. It's not, we want quality, and let's talk about that quality, and let's talk about prioritizing and bonding and what makes you so successful here, and to let them know that you're there for them.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Russell?
Well, you definitely want to express the confidence that you have in those people because you took time to hire them. They're part of your team. And a leader's job is to give people things that they need to succeed. That's why we set those parameters. We bring these people in because they've got knowledge, skills, and abilities and desire to help to succeed. And they want the organization to succeed. So it's making sure that they have all of the tools that they need. And part of a leader's role is to be very transparent, you know. There's nothing worse than a leader that walks around like she or he knows everything, and it's really just kind of in over their head. And when people go to them and they want answers, you know, one thing that'll help garner some respect, as strange as it may sound, is when somebody asks you a question and you don't have an answer, saying, I don't know. But I will get you an answer. And a lot of my career was baptism by fire, where I had to find out on the fly. And people respect that. You learn and you grow together. And your new people have another place where they can shine because they can bring knowledge to you that was not there. One of the reasons you brought them in.
Oh, okay. We have to take a break, and I don't want to take a break. All right, you're listening. Use hashtag VBB Radio and share your thoughts as you're having them. Yes, this is recorded. Yes, you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, wherever you happen to be listening. The thing is, we are an international, ongoing conversation of leaders making change. So join in that conversation. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to The Voice of Bold Business Radio. In every program, we share stories, tips, and concepts that benefit short-term goals and increase confidence in long-term positioning. For additional perspectives on your growth strategy, Jess Dewell is your business advisor and consultant. Go to voiceofboldbusiness.com and click the Find Out More button to get started. Now, back to Jess.
You are listening to program 238, Understand Your Culture. I'm talking with Barbara Jaynes, founder of Positively Funded, and Russell Dennis, a possibility engineer. And we're talking about what do we do with new employees. We're talking about stories where we have taken things by our own hands and had success, and in my case, not success, but definitely trial and error, because realistically, the more we try works unless you really want to get to your goal. But when we're talking about interacting with people and building relationships, that can be a goal, and it ought to be a goal. I'm going to say it should be a goal. And at the same point in time, it's a different kind of quantification. We can't conquer that and then move on. It's an ongoing process, like taking care of a pet, watering a plant, having any strong relationship, fixing a hurt relationship, whether it's work or personal life, building one for the first time. And that actually, boy, I'm thinking about business partners and founders of organizations, right? How we get into some of those things, and it's an ongoing relationship. People talk about work relationships, especially in the higher, in the founder and executive levels, as being as time consuming, I would say, and requiring as much effort as a marriage. And for people who don't want that, they don't really stand to stay anywhere really long and build these deep relationships like what we're talking about. And so I really like the stories that you were sharing in the first half. And so, Russell, now that we're at the second half, I want to know for you, you were talking about all of these different things and the elements of culture. So how do we know what our culture is?
Well, I think we'll get a sense of that pretty quickly just from the way that people move around us or navigate around us. If there's some hesitation, something's not a fit, especially if we're getting that hesitation from everyone around us. So it's a question of being as observant as possible, asking as many questions as you can, and just looking to see how other people function in the organization. An organization is only as strong as the weakest relationship in it. Everything is built on these relationships. You know, if you're uncomfortable, you have to do whatever you can to increase that comfort level. If you've got an individual who appears to reject a lot of what's going on or is confused, those check-ins that Barbara was talking about are very important. It's critical to find out before these things get any traction what the problem is, if there is a problem, and to do what you can to increase that person's comfort level or find out where that disconnect is.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Barbara?
Thanks, Jess. I would love to. I think you have to be authentic and true to your culture, and your culture comes from your missions and value statements. And you need to say, oh, you know what? We just did a contract with ABC Maps over here. And in this contract, here are the things that we did that were true to our value and mission statement. And we're really proud that we have this partnership now. And be authentic and point out, here are the things that we've done, that we've kept to our word and to our mission statement. And make sure that you're using your key 3 words all the time and that they're in there. And they'll be, oh, and that really alleviates some of the stress and the unknown. It takes your new employees out of survival mode when they know, wow, they're really going to do what they said they did, with what they're going to do. And it helps them to get into growth mode quicker.
Yeah. The measure with which others are going to evaluate, do they trust us or not? Are we doing what we said we were going to do?
That's integrity. You know, it's building that trust and that integrity. Those are things a leader has to embody and has to show to all of the people around. Authenticity, you can't be anything other than yourself. And if you're not genuine, it just sticks out like a sore thumb.
And it's not always easy. It's not always easy. Sometimes integrity is stopping something before it becomes toxic. Sometimes integrity is recognizing, hey, we're spinning and we've got to figure out how to stop spinning so we can we're not just moving, we're actually moving forward. And those, I think, are the hardest part of what I have to do still to this day. Check-ins, awesome. Understanding what's going on, awesome. Being able to have some sort of development process, awesome, right? Because and I'll even tell you, the two of you, this, in Red Direction, I'm kind of not anti-metrics, but we don't use them as much as we could. And I think is because I had a really bad experience, and it's from my very first endeavor of everything being by the metric to the detriment of me and the people around me. And it came out of me in a way that made me a really not fun person. I was very transparent, but I wasn't necessarily fun to work with. And it was hard, right? It was hard for me, it was hard for them, to a place where I went to the other extreme, right? And I'd say the last 7 years or so has been coming back from the other extreme, and it's slow. It's, those of you out there listening, it really does take that long of, hey, so, okay, there's a metric. I've got this metric, but I don't really want to use it because I know what happened last time.
Yeah. You know, the multiple bottom lines that nonprofits have really make it difficult because on one hand, you've got these qualitative things to look at. What's the quality of someone's life as the result of having access to your services and your products? How have they been positively impacted? You know, some of that stuff doesn't always fit on the pivot chart.
Yeah.
So you have to strike that balance, and that's where the values, vision, and mission alignment is so critical, because you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And through your programs, your services, when you're putting these things together, you have to have a conversation of what success looks like. You have to have that conversation. What does it look like to my volunteers? What does it look like to my donors? What does it look like to my staff? And address all of those multiple audiences. What does it look like? And you have those conversations and make a decision to take those things and use them to get better at what you're doing. A lot of people look at this as a crappy homework assignment. Oh, well, we've got to do this in order to meet the terms of the grant. If you don't define what success looks like, somebody else is going to do that for you. So you have to do that internally to the extent that you can, and then create the best way that you can. Easy to access, understand, and use tools so that these measures can be taken as close to where the services are delivered as possible. Because if it flows right into the work of the folks that are doing it, it's easy, all of it's collected, and you don't have as much trouble. Easier said than done a lot of times.
Oh, yeah. I'm listening to you going, so how do I do it? Because that's what I need. I need that, more of that, you know, the quantitative piece of here are the things that we've got to accomplish. And this is what success looks like. Yet at the same point in time, recognizing where we shy away from. So what is, and I would say our personal relationship with those things, because those around us are going to reflect back to us what we're putting out there. So because I never prioritized metrics of any kind, we didn't have metrics of any kind for a long time, right? So and metrics are relative, right? We had some, right? We had things that we were working with, but they didn't necessarily inform our decisions to the fullest extent with which they could have. And that we left money on the table every single time. So I will be the one to tell you, people, if you don't figure it out and you're on one side or the other, you're going to leave money on the table either way. Too much around the people side of things, too much around the metric side of things.
Jess, I think that the metrics are really important.
They are.
But I think that you need a balance of metrics. You need a balance of quantity sold, stock prices, all that stuff to balance with your social and value goals. You know that we had X amount of volunteer hours in the last quarter. Do you know that we brought in X amount of food for our local food bank? Do you know? You need to have those emotional metrics as much as you do those economic metrics.
Okay, let's talk about emotional metrics, because I think businesses, nonprofits are really good at that, but businesses are not as good at that. And I hear talk about that, a little bit about ways we could do that on a personal journey level. Like Barbara, you had said something about send somebody, hey, in just a little while, you're going to be able to access this benefit now that you've been here for so long, right? That is a kind of emotional metric. It's that part of that individual's journey and their inclusion in this bigger organization. So I'm curious, from an organizational standpoint, what would that look like, right? What would that look like to have the emotional metrics when we want to sell orange widgets to get a Broncos fan to to join in on and jump on our bandwagon?
So, first of all, this Steelers fan is not going to jump on the orange bandwagon, just so you know.
So true. So true. That's okay. I'm a Seahawks fan, so I get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those emotional metrics are telling the stories of your coworkers saying, hey, I went and used my volunteer hours at this shelter that we help support. And here are some of the stories that I got from that shelter and the people that I met, and how that has changed and impacted me. Yeah. And I hope that your volunteer experience here is just as impactful and personal to you as mine has been to me. Mm-hmm. And that's one way of doing it. Another way is asking the employee, we have these 5 nonprofits that we support. Is there something in your life that's speaking to you that you want to go outside of our box and support? Maybe you have a parent with MS or Parkinson's and you need to go out and support Walk for MS. Tell us that. We're open to it. We know that everyone has a different journey and a different story. So we want to be here for you. And it's about changing the world, not about confining you to these 5 charities that we already support.
Yes, it's really important when you're dealing with folks, whatever organization you're in, the best thing you can do for yourself is make deposits in an emotional bank account to everybody around you. What matters? You have to find out what matters. What keeps people awake at night? And put yourself in their shoes. I mean, that's the key to delivering superior service no matter what it is that you're doing. And people that work for us or volunteer for us are our customers. Mm-hmm. They're no different than anyone else. There's a value that we provide. There's something that we provide. There are things that keep them up at night that we can be the answer for. They will have passion around things that drive them. And if you want people to shine and to be at their best, they should be working on things that play to their strengths and that they're passionate about to the greatest extent possible. And that's going to make your organization shine. And we're always holding those conversations about what can we do to make things better. Are there things we should stop doing? Are there things we should keep doing? Are there things we're not doing that we should start doing? It's always about that continuous growth cycle and moving forward the best way you can and keeping that conversation going with the people you serve. You can never get perfect, probably, but you can certainly get better all the time, and people will reward you with loyalty. You may not have the best widget, but if they know you really care about who they are, they'll buy your widgets at twice the price.
It's true. And that comes out in so many ways. And we all get pulled in so many different directions. I'm thinking, you know, and I'm trying, as you were sharing, the two of you were sharing, I was trying to think, what are my emotional metrics for Red Direction? What do I share with the team? And I don't know if I'm doing a good enough job about that. You know, the successes we get are things like, man, I could have never navigated that toxic relationship with this executive that was my peer without you. I could have never made that change to understand how solving this particular problem actually would impact and strengthen the relationship with all of our internal stakeholders in our organization. So those are the types of things, and they're also very different. So I'm gonna have to sit with that more, because I think that being able to identify them to tell the story internally is so important. And I also think being able to tell them externally is incredibly important. Yet, when the widget doesn't look the same because everybody's unique dynamic within an organization is different, it's a little more challenging because it doesn't fit in a box. Culture does not fit in a box. And that's one of the reasons we talk about it, and it's easy to dismiss. I don't know where to put that box. It's not even a box. So how do I stick it on the bookshelf with another book, with all my books, if it doesn't look like a book, right? That kind of thing. And I think that that is a really important something to consider that we're all grappling with. What are we pushing away because it looks different or is shaped different or feels different than what we're used to? And could there be a benefit there? So tell me about a leadership trait that is necessary to have the openness and the willingness to look at culture and to be able to share, to be able to start creating something that's lasting for new employees that are coming in.
Well, this is funny. I was recently at a Barbara luncheon, which is HR executives. And I was there for one of my nonprofits that wants to partner with small businesses. And we divided up and did this team exercise. So I'm at this luncheon, they're all HR executives, and then there's me. And they're like, what would be your idea for HR? And I said, mine was, and I actually presented with the other executives, so I got picked. Me, the non-HR person. Mine was the I-SPY portal, where every employee has a link to go into this I-SPY portal where they see a problem that might be parking in the parking lot. Just getting into the parking lot in the morning is so frustrating for me, I can't stand it. And I have a solution. So from that to I can improve productivity, I can save on energy in our company, those types of things where you can go into the I Spy a Problem portal, I Spy an Opportunity portal, actually, and go in and put in your input and say, this is it. And your name is attached to it. No one can steal your intellect. It's tied to you. This is for every employee from top to bottom, no matter what you do. You have this opportunity to engage and put out what you think is a problem solver and how to take care of things, and to show your passion for the company and to get rewarded for it. Because there are tiers of rewardment. Every problem solving thing that went into the I Spy an Opportunity that was used, that person automatically got cash for it. And then if it made a difference to the bottom line, it was tiered as to how much that could go up. And it's your intellectual property. Because I know right now, it's really scary. I've got this idea, and then I put it out there and someone steals it from me. And there was no way for this to be stolen from you. You got ownership for it, and you got rewarded for it and acknowledged.
You touched on a really important part of trust that most companies and even nonprofit organizations overlook. They overlook the concept of collaboration and creative ideas as only company product. And I think that's the quickest way to erode trust, is to not give credit where credit is due. And I don't think it's purposeful. I don't think companies are purposefully doing that. I just think it's the way that it's always been done, and we haven't looked at it differently. So to hear you share something like this is pretty powerful, Barbara.
Thanks, Jess.
Yeah. What would you add to that, Russell?
Yeah, it's really knowing what makes you tick. And when you understand what makes you tick, then when other people do things, we don't tend to take it personally, you know.
Right.
I know that, you know, people do things because of where they are. But what I believe encouraging people to take care of themselves is really important. We were able to do that at the tribe. You know, this notion of calling in sick is a bad thing. People had other things that could be distractions. So you created an environment where you encourage people to use their talents, honor their gifts, you know, release any idea that you're going to do everything perfectly has to go. Mm-hmm. Release any notion of perfection or any attachment to perfection, you know. Let people know that this is an environment where we all collectively together can succeed. It's not about failure. It's about what we can learn as a group to get better at what we're doing, you know. Celebrating those wins, you know, everything, even the smallest things, you know, that's important, is to celebrate the wins, which is a way to be kind to ourselves, you know. When things crop up from time to time, I've got this thing I call the 10-minute test. How important is this going to be 10 minutes from now? So encourage people, hey, if you're agitated or doubtful, don't hesitate to step back, take a few breaths, and get recentered and come back to whatever's going on with you. How are you talking to yourself? You know, I think that the majority of us, if other people said things to us that we said to ourselves, we'd probably be locked up for homicide. Either we commit suicide or homicide, one or the other. There's no way we'd let another person talk to us the way we talk to ourselves. So that's really important, to allow people to give themselves a break and be understanding, you know, understand that, yes, they make mistakes. So it's not a question of criticizing people all the time. Always point out what people are doing right when you're having these coaching moments, you know. Right. People do it. There's good and bad. There's measures. What can you learn from it? And encouraging people to take care of themselves. Now, there's a young lady by the name of Beth Cantor who wrote a book called A Healthy, Happy Nonprofit. And she points out that a lot of nonprofit leaders experience burnout. They don't take care of themselves. They work too many hours. They're really not very kind to themselves. And so there are a lot of tips in that book that talk about how you can take care of yourself, take care of your people, create an environment where people honor themselves, so they choose themselves. So this is all very important if you're going to be effective.
This is really important stuff. It happens with founders too. It happens with executives on companies that, you know, are 100-ish to 200-ish employees, that burnout and that self-care. And people around us notice it. We might think we're sweeping it under the rug, but all of us are tripping over that dust bunny that we have put underneath that rug. And that reflects our culture, because the dynamic of the relationship in an organization is something that impacts our culture as well. And we've been talking around that, so I'm going to state that right now. Who we are, what our role is, what our responsibility is, versus what we're really willing to be accountable for. How are we showing up? And are we being as all in as we can be at that time? And if we're shoving stuff under a rug, we can't. So that said, I want to know, what makes it bold? What makes it bold to build relationships that will strengthen our culture?
You know, what's bold about it is really making that effort to be transparent and vulnerable. And at the same time, setting a standard and mirroring it. Because it's not always easy. We have lofty aspirations and they're hard to live up to, oftentimes. And if I find that I don't, you know, it can be real easy for that inner critic to start going. So but you know, vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable and transparent and set and live that standard. And when I fall short, that's okay. Admit that I've fallen short and talk about what I can do to correct it, not wallow in the fact that I fell short.
And I think looking at it from a healthy whole person and a team aspect, and being true to that, and telling your employees, you know, you're not just another cog in the wheel here. We want a healthy whole person here, and tell us where we're failing you on that. And we're a team. And the executives have to take that on too. They need to look at themselves as a healthy whole person, and where is the company failing them with that? And are they taking everything on their shoulders, or are they really being a team and saying, I have a team. This doesn't have to keep me up at night. I have amazing people here to rely on, and talents and gifts. And you know what? I know that as a team, we can do this together, and we're going to be whole and healthy.
Oh yeah, good leaders build other leaders. And the better your team is, the better you're going to look as a leader. So it's win-win. Why wouldn't you do it?
And us leaders, we're on a path of self-exploration. I'm a way better leader than I was 20 years ago, but I still think I have a long way to go. And it's the way that I'm showing up every day that is going to set the stage for how other people interact with me along that journey. And I would say that's a challenge for each and every single one of us as individuals. And then also to being a steward of our organization, profit, nonprofit, that we're able to do that as well. And how much is too much when we are, and how much is not enough when we are thinking about what our mission is, what our value statements are for the organization that we belong to and that we want to see succeed, because we're choosing to be there. That's really what it comes down to. We're choosing to be there. All right. All the show notes for this program will be found at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P238. That's voiceofboldbusiness.com/P for program 238. You can also search the site for Understand Your Culture. As I mentioned earlier in the program, you've listened, you've watched, so now rate this. Tell us you liked it. Tell us you didn't. Tell us your experience. Use in the comments wherever you're listening or watching, and across the internet, use hashtag VBB Radio to share your experiences. Keep this conversation going, because it's our practical experience and it's your practical experience that by discussing it and using that information, that's what's going to define today's effective leadership. Thanks so much for being here, and I want to leave you with this